talking of taxpayers' money, we're going to talk now to Norman Brennan, former police officer, friend of the show, about car theft. Because car theft is something that affects more and more and more of us. It's certainly been something that I have been subjected to, and I'll tell you that story as we go on. Also, Alan Mendoza here has got his stories, and I'm afraid they are plural by the sounds of it, with regard to his experience of car theft. And shock data reveals that on average, apparently, we hear today, 78.5% of all car thefts go unsolved. There's about 100,000 of them in Britain a year now. Norman, thanks for joining the show.
Good morning.
Have the police given up on car theft?
I don't think they've given up. They just can't cope. They can barely cope with everyday crime. Most response officers in every force in Britain normally go from one grade 1 call, which is a 999 call, to the next, and they regularly don't get enough time to investigate crimes. Some will have 20 or 30 separate crimes to investigate, as well as having to deal with their everyday policing jobs. And in London, Russell, as you probably know, there's rarely a day or a weekend where thousands of police officers are not dragged away from their own policing boroughs to police demonstrations, and that further delays them investigating crime. But these are dreadful statistics. 78.5% of vehicle crimes not solved. Pretty much similar to burglary. We just haven't got the officers, and we're 18,000 police officers short from the population growth from 2009.
But Norman, is it true that we don't have the officers? I mean, yes, police officer recruitment has not kept up with the increasing population. Of course, the population is growing, as we know, from a net migration perspective, by 900,000 people a year. But we now have more police officers on the streets than ever. But the trouble is, they're not on the streets, are they? I mean, where are they hiding? There's 147,000 of them across Britain. You say that it's a resource issue, but there are more police officers in Britain now than ever before. I'm not quite sure what they're doing.
Well, we haven't got the officers to cope. It's as simple as that. I mean, crime has exploded exponentially across Britain, and just the average shoplifter, when they're arrested, and they're rarely ever arrested, Russell, takes up an entire shift of a police officer. So say you've got, for example, 6 police officers on duty, 2 are out on patrol and they arrest a shoplifter. They're back at the police station. Another one's going round taking a statement from a burglary victim, and another one's protecting a scene of a car crash where someone sadly has died, and the other one is his own or her own. You have one officer sometimes policing an entire county. But that Norman, is how bad it is.
No, Norman, I get that. I mean, it sounds like not just a resource issue, but an organisation issue. Why can't the police employ civilians who need less training and earn less to look after the booking and processing of shoplifters and prisoners? I mean, on the rare occasion that a shoplifter is actually arrested, by the way.
I completely agree. It's what I've said for years. What should happen is that you rightly say, and I rightly believe, and how the public would want it, is that every police officer should be on the beat for the maximum amount of hours that they possibly can be. If you make an arrest, go back to the police station, download your body-worn camera and hand it over to a civilian expert at interviewing and dealing with the paperwork, and you get back out on there.
Yeah. So what sort of percentage do we think police officers spend on the beat versus doing admin? You know, maybe not just processing people that they've arrested, but, you know, admin that would be largely unnecessary. Maybe, you know, filling in forms in triplicate, dealing, I don't know, with, you know, monthly diversity reports to demonstrate the ethnicity of the people that they've arrested and processed, and all of that other nonsense. I mean, how much time is actually spent by way of police officer time on the streets, on the beat, rather than admin?
A huge amount doing paperwork and admin, waiting for solicitors to come along, as you rightly pointed out just then, dealing with paperwork, getting an interview room, getting details from the CPS with a view of charging or not. A huge amount is done as a result of bureaucracy. But it was pretty much like that when I was in, but we attended every call. Something has seriously gone wrong and it needs to be looked into. But I'm afraid the policing are lost at the moment. And just as a caveat, and I think you're going to tell your story, Russell, there, a friend of mine owns one of the biggest chauffeur companies in London. In Essex once, he had an £80,000 BMW stolen in the morning, and Essex police had closed the case by lunchtime that day. Another one of his Range Rovers was stolen in Hackney, and he traced it on his tracker to 4 streets away. He called the Met Police and they said, we have got no one to attend. There's £100,000, supposing that was a robbery. You've got a £100,000 vehicle on their area, but they've got no officer to attend. So he diverted another one of his vehicles to go and sit with that vehicle so it could be kept safe. Well, by the time that person got there, the tracker had been moved and the vehicle was gone, never to be seen again. Just 2 crimes, 180,000 quid's worth.
And no wonder the car theft is on the up, is because those that seek to carry out such crimes know that they have very, very little chance of being caught in the act or indeed caught afterwards. I mean, you talk about Essex, that's where I live. It's got so bad where I live now that the residents of the development on which I live, we've now had to employ private security because we never, and I mean never, see a police officer. I've lived in the same house for 5 years in Hutton in Essex. I have never seen a police car or a police person on the beat anywhere near where I live. So we've now had to employ at our own expense the services of a private security company, which actually has made a huge difference. But whenever previous to that cars were stolen on my development, which would literally be on a weekly basis, what we would immediately get would be a text or an email with a crime reference number, a couple of updates, and that was it. I mean, it almost seems as though car theft, even though it is hardly a victimless crime, it's been deprioritised by the police.
I agree. It really is unacceptable, and we need 38,000 more officers to actually take the streets back. The police have lost it.
And Norman, I would be happy, and I'm sure most people would, to pay for that. You know, I'm a low tax kind of guy, but I would actually be very, very happy to pay a little bit more tax if it was guaranteed to be spent on police officers. Norman, got to leave it there. Thank you very much for your insight.